I have the Nubia Z60 Ultra, and it's quite a unique phone, and I'm excited to go over it. So let's start with what's included in the box. For starters, I want to say that I love that this company sends a full package for the consumer. Most of the major brands are cutting costs by not giving you everything that they used to in a box, but I'm glad that this company isn't following suit. So the Nubia actually comes with everything you really need to get going with your phone and have it protected if you wanted to. Aside from the phone, the box also includes a charging cable and charging brick, which charges the phone at 80 watts. It also comes pre-installed with a screen protector, which whether you want it or not, it's up to you. You can always take it off if you don't, but I like that it's included for those that really do want one. Plus, when it comes pre-installed from factory, most of the time it's going to come out better than if you were to do it yourself. And it also comes with a case. It's not the most protective or the best material I've seen on a case, but the fact that it even comes with one and that you can protect your phone at least until you order another one is a big plus. I would love to see the top brands start bringing this back, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. At first glance, the design definitely pops. I wouldn't call it pretty, but it is eye-catching. The sides or rails are flat, and they did a good job in rounding out the edges so you don't feel anything sharp. In contrast to the sharper edge that's found on the S24 Ultra. The button placement is spot on. I only have to adjust my hand slightly to reach the volume up rocker, but besides that, everything else is within reach without having to adjust my hand at all. Continuing on the side, the power button has a nice accented color, which kind of gives a little bit of character to the phone. On top of that, both the power button and the slider are textured, which for the button is not a necessity, but it's a nice touch. And for the slider, it is a necessity because you need the extra grip to be able to slide it easily. And I'm really loving the slider. Because of the two OnePlus phones that I have, I've gotten used to using it to silence a phone. And when I switch to a phone that doesn't have the slider, I really notice it and I kind of miss it. The main difference is that the slider on the Nubia Z60 Ultra only has 2 stops, while OnePlus has 3. But either way, the fact that you have the slider for silence mode is a big plus. I also think that they made a great decision by placing all of the buttons on one side of the phone, because with the flat sides, you can actually stand your phone up without needing a case or a stand, and it could come in handy in some situations. Even with the flat sides, the transition from the side to the back and front glass are very smooth. I don't feel anything as sharp or uncomfortable, and they just did a really good job with the transition between the 3 pieces of the phone. Things change a bit when we get to the back of the phone though. For starters, the design is a little bit jarring. It doesn't seem to have a flow to it, especially the way they place the camera lenses. For example, each lens has a different shape. Instead of giving it some sort of cohesiveness, it's just 3 different shapes plopped next to each other. Everything else besides the lenses is very blocky. For example, the lenses are actually sitting on another layer of material, and that is seems like a block of glass that they just glued onto that. It doesn't even seem like it's the same piece of glass. It looks like it literally glued onto that, even though I doubt it is. I hope it isn't. I believe instead of making it just a flat edge, having it slope to the phone would have been a nicer touch, but maybe there was some sort of cost savings there that kind of let the phone stay in the price range it is. What I do like about the back is the color and material. So the back glass has a little bit of texture on it, plus it has a matte metallic look to it. So it's a very cool looking material, and for the most part, it will make a very nice backplate for any phone. And another great feature of the phone that they added, even though the phone is at a lower price point, is that it's IP68 water and dust resistant. And that's a big deal because the water and dust resistance is the first thing to really suffer to be cut out when it comes to cost cutting. The next thing I want to talk about is the battery. And the Nubia Z60 Ultra comes with a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. That's actually the largest battery of any phone that I own. And from my usage, it really shows because I feel like the phone just never drains. I'm sure it'll lead to great screen on time, and I'm excited to try this when I do the full battery test. The one note that I want to make about the battery though is that it's a lithium polymer battery rather than a lithium ion battery. And based on some research that I did, it seems that lithium polymer degrades at a faster rate than lithium ion, so that's something to keep in mind. However, I think what's kind of working for the phone is that it's starting with 1,000 milliamp hours more than the usual phone, and it also has 80-watt wired charging. So even if the battery does degrade faster, you have a bigger gap before it starts getting to a point in which you can't really use the battery. Plus, in the event that it's dying before the full day, you could top it off in seems like 45 minutes. And then another thing to mention is that the phone does not have any wireless charging, but again, that's one of the first things that's cut off when you're trying to keep costs low. So no surprise that it doesn't have it. But at least the phone comes with 80-watt charging, so I guess that's a positive there. Moving on to the screen, the picture quality is great. It has a nice crisp picture and the refresh rate is really high. So it really does pull in together and give you a nice viewing experience. The resolution is only a little bit above the 1080p mark, but the pixels per inch is around 400, which is a good number. My favorite part about the screen though is the under display camera. Now, the camera is obviously not going to give you a great picture. Actually, it's going to give you a pretty crappy picture. But for me, the way I use the phone, I don't really take selfies with the front camera all too often. So I could just get used to turning the phone around and taking it with the main camera in the back. But I really do prefer having a fully uninterrupted screen. And even though the under display camera is not 100% uninterrupted, you can't see it if you look closely enough. When you're watching something and focusing on the center of the video and focusing on a subject, the peripheral of your eye is not going to pick up that there's an under display camera. It's just going to kind of blend it in and it just feels like a fully interrupted screen. So that's one of my favorite features of the phone. Having that full screen is just awesome. Moving on to the software, the UI just hasn't been a problem for this phone. It's super snappy and I haven't noticed any lagging or hiccups that I've noticed in other UIs. So it's feeling very premium. The software does let you customize the speed of the animations, but I would keep it in the snappy form that it is just because it feels so fast. Also, the fingerprint reader and facial recognition are pretty fast. The facial recognition sometimes asks me to tap on the screen to, I guess, re-certify, re-verify, or something like that. And that's a little bit weird, but when it doesn't ask me to do that, it does recognize me pretty fast and unlocks the phone. But the fingerprint reader is really, really good the way it is. One, the placement is in a great spot. It's a little bit higher than a lot of other phones, which is comfortable for placing your thumb. It lets me place my thumb a little bit flatter, which is better for the phone to read the fingerprint more accurately and faster. So it leads to just a better experience. Plus, I haven't had too many fails with the fingerprint reader. It just seems to recognize my fingerprint and unlock the phone. I did find it weird that I couldn't find a way to shut off the phone within the settings or with a combination of the power and volume buttons. So it took me a little bit. I had to look it up and really it seems like the only way to power off the phone is to hold the power button. The issue with that is that I have the Google Assistant assigned to the power button. So basically what happens is that the Google Assistant pops up and I just have to ignore it and keep holding the button. Eventually, the power menu pops up and I can click on power off or restart. But it just seems like a little bit of a wonky way to shut off the phone. It's not world ending, but it's just an odd process. Something to consider is the software and security updates. So I did a little bit of research on that because I couldn't find a clear answer on the website or on Amazon where I bought the phone. And I got two answers that could drastically change the amount of support that you get. I found one answer stating that it could be up to 3 years of support. And I found another one saying that it's at least 3 years of support. So basically, the two options are that they could stop it at any time before 3 years. So it could be 2 years or even less, maybe if they don't have enough sales. Or the other option is that it's going to be at least 3 years, which is still not on par with the major brands. But at least it's in a place where it can actually give you enough support that you might want to try this phone. In terms of software bugs, I haven't really noticed anything too significant. One of the things that I've experienced was Shazam having issues recognizing songs 2 or 3 times, which is odd because it's not something that I normally go through. So I don't know if this may be a bug in the phone communicating with Shazam or Shazam accessing the microphone or what it might be, or it could just be that Shazam was having an off day because it happened the same day. So I really don't know. The second issue that I noticed is with my Google Messages, and I use it a little differently on the phones that I'm testing versus my main phone. So this is something that might not apply to everyone. But so what I do with Google Messages is that I actually log in online on a web browser, and then I install that site as an app onto my phone. So this way I can actually keep track and respond to the messages on my main phone number so that I can use my secondary phone as my main phone whenever I want to. This is very helpful when I want to test a phone. That way I could just literally leave my main phone at home to make sure I don't rely on it for anything, and makes me use the phone fully when I test it. So in that situation, what happens is when I close the app from the recents menu, the next time I go to open it, it never fully loads. It just stays on the loading screen indefinitely. So the only way to fix it is to restart the phone and then reload the app, and it works fine. Again, this is not something that's going to apply to everyone, but if you do install sites as apps on your phone, that could be something to keep in mind. Again, I do this with all my other phones and I haven't noticed this issue at all. So it seems to be limited to this phone. And lastly, I want to talk about the camera. Based on the design, it looks like the Nubia Z60 Ultra is kind of like a split between a gaming phone and a flagship phone. So the camera specs are flagship quality, but the performance of the software is not quite flagship quality. So let me go over the details. Starting with the camera specs, the sensors are all large sensors. As an overall package, these sensors are actually larger than what's found on the OnePlus 12, which is impressive because those were the largest group of sensors I had seen before. The Z60 Ultra has a different setup than was usually found on phones. For example, the usual main sensor is around the 23 to 24 millimeter range, and the Nubia's main sensor is at 35 millimeter. Moving to the ultra wide, the usual is half of the main sensor, so that puts it around 12 to 14 millimeters, and the Nubia is set up at 18 millimeter. And to finish things up, the periscope is at 85 millimeter, which is pretty close to where the other ones are. From a few articles and videos that I've read and watched, the 85 millimeter focal length supposedly is a great one for portraits, so that might just be that they chose that focal length because it's a common one to use. The great thing about this setup is that the sensors will transition at close to 2x before going to the next sensor. So that provides a smooth transition from one sensor to the next, basically limiting it to around 2x per jump, per transition. And what that's going to do is provide high quality results from the first sensor to the last one without any big gaps in between. So even though it's not the usual setup for cameras, it's actually the type of setup that I would prefer and I think is more useful. What it's doing is removing the lower end of the ultra wide, which I find to be the least useful of the lenses, and kind of getting a middle ground on that between a main sensor and an ultra wide, and then moving it up from there at 2x each time. So it does take some getting used to, considering that it's different than the usual setup that you find on phones, but I do believe that this is the better setup and maybe it'll catch on. Honestly, I really believe that the shortcomings of the camera are all software related. The first thing that I want to point out with the camera is that if the lighting is not great, then it's going to take a little bit of time for the phone to capture the shot. Even though it's larger sensors, it seems like it just takes a bit to grab a low light shot. And it's just a lot slower than what you find on Samsung and Google and even OnePlus. And of course, that's going to lead to some blurry photos if there's any movement in the scene. The second thing is that the processing is a bit light. If you capture a photo with good light, that's not a bad thing. It's actually probably a positive thing. But with low light photos, the heavy processing is really what cleans up the picture. The third thing is that the camera app is a bit of a mixed bag. There are some things about the camera app that are good, but there are other things that kind of ruin the experience. One of the things is the way that they list the extra modes. So instead of having just a list that with a name that's self-explanatory, they have a larger list with thumbnail and the name. And then so one, it takes up more space, and two, it's not always clear on what the photo mode will do or how to use it. So it's just not a clean experience when compared to the major brands. However, navigating through the camera app is very smooth. No complaints there. You could easily swipe from one side to the other. It's very responsive. It's a good camera app in terms of speed and functionality. Another issue with the camera app is that it doesn't let me switch lenses when I'm recording. So if I start off with the ultra wide sensor, it'll let me zoom in to the max of that sensor, but it won't switch to the next lens. So the one reason I can kind of guess that is because the sensors aren't exactly aligned all too closely. If they were to transition from one to the next, it wouldn't be smooth. So I guess just making it in that manner is going to prevent any of that jarring transition. So in order to switch lenses, you actually have to stop the video, choose a lens you want, and then restart recording again. Another thing that I found a little bit weird was the limitation on which lens you can use super steady on. So the super steady mode is only available on the 18mm ultra wide sensor. So when that crops in, it kind of looks similar to the main sensor on other phones. And it's actually a good distance or focal length when it's recording in super steady mode. That's not the issue, but the fact that I can't use it on the main sensor, 35mm sensor, it kind of feels like a missed opportunity there. I can see why it's not going to be used on the periscope because the distance is too far, and when you go that far, the super steady really just gives a lot of jitteriness in the video and just makes it unusable anyway. So might as well not even include it on the periscope. That one makes sense. So I covered a lot of negative things about the camera app, but the great thing about the camera app is that it lets you record 4K at 120 frames per second on every single lens. There's no limitation there. And you can also record in 8K 30 frames per second, but that one's limited to the main sensor, which I won't complain about that one either because at least it has it. So my final thoughts about this phone is that it can either be a great phone or a mediocre phone depending on how it's used. If the main purpose of getting this phone is for a great media experience and a great gaming experience, the phone will deliver. As long as the camera is not the main focus, I think most people would enjoy owning this phone. Now, if you go around and you want to take a lot of photos, you're going to have a mixed bag there, and your experience might not be as enjoyable as for someone that wants to use it for multimedia. But even then, the phone will get some good pictures out of it. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you found this phone as interesting as I do. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.